Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Seeing Beyond the Perimeter. During this free webinar, you will learn information on the following. What should be considered when choosing the right technology for perimeter surveillance and security? How AI-based analytics can be beneficial? How climate can play a role in choosing perimeter security? And the different types of camera technologies available and how they can help with perimeter security. Our sponsor today is Hanwha Vision America. Our speaker presenter is Aaron Sachs. I want to share with you a little bit about Aaron. He is the Senior Technical Marketing and Training Manager at Hanwha Vision America. His primary responsibilities include managing the development of training and certification programs for various user groups. He also authors various technical documents, white papers, sales materials, and other literature. As new products are developed, he provides extensive testing and benchmarking to ensure high-quality products are released. I am Ralph C. Jensen, publisher of Security Today magazine. Thank you for joining us and attending today. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items I want to share. If you experience a technical issue during this webinar, please click on the Help button, and a member of our staff will help. If you would like to ask a question, please enter that question by clicking on the Q&A button. I will host a brief Q&A session at the end of this webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be loaded on our website tomorrow morning, where you can listen to it again and share with a colleague. Once again, thank you for joining us today. I would like to turn the time over to Aaron.
Thank you so much, Ralph, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. I'll go ahead and get right into it. Just so everyone knows who Hanwha is, in case it's a new name for you, we are a South Korean manufacturer. We manufacture end-to-end solutions, including cameras, recorders, and things like that. We are part of the Hanwha Group, like I said, a Fortune 500 company. We make lots of other products. We've been in business for many, many years. And you can see this picture here on the slide shows one of our manufacturing facilities. So we make our own products in our own factories with our own employees there. So a big differentiator in the market. And one of the other pieces that sets us apart is our supply chain of trust that we, like I said, manufacture in-house. We do our own R&D and QA and QC, and we manufacture many of our own products, things like our chipset you see here in the middle, our WiseNet 7, that's our DSP or processor at the heart of many of our cameras. So it's a unique product, unique items that we have here to allow us to build world-class video surveillance products. And like I mentioned, we are a South Korean company with over 30 years of manufacturing experience, specifically in video surveillance. Cybersecurity is really, really important for us. And so all of our IP cameras, analog cameras, NVRs, and DVRs, and encoders that we sell and distribute in North America are manufactured in our own facilities in South Korea or Vietnam. We, like I said, manufacture a full suite of products. All of our products now are NDAA compliant, and we have a large range of TAA compliant products as well, making them eligible for GSA government contracts. We also are FCC compliant, UL compliant as well. Okay, so let's kick it off. So today, I want to talk about some of the unique challenges that you see with securing perimeters. And perimeters could be a variety of applications. I'll show you on the next couple slides some examples of that. But, you know, it's not necessarily one size fits all. You may have perimeters that are talking about large corporate facilities with lots of, fence line or, forested areas. It could be perimeters in a smaller facility, more in urban area. There's a variety of ways there, but some of the challenges that encompass all of them are typically you'll have low light. Typically, you have large areas to cover. You might not have buildings to put cameras on across that entire perimeter. You often have people and vehicular entrances that you want to be able to monitor and watch. And typically with large perimeters, you also have a lot of things like wildlife or other things that can typically cause false alerts with a traditional video surveillance system. And then finally, we'll talk about how audio can be used to help with monitoring and maintaining a large perimeter. Like Ralph mentioned, any questions that come in, feel free to type it into the Q&A, and then we can work on getting to that later on. So where do we encounter these typical environments? Often when you say the word perimeter, your brain goes to specific areas, but it can be things like retail applications, where you might have warehousing, distribution, manufacturing facilities, corporate campuses where you've got lots of buildings and park areas and parking lots, things like that, mass transit, corrections, education. All of those have lots of perimeters that often are fighting against things like darkness, and being able to see past that, see into the perimeter and see beyond to keep their facility safe. And so what are the problems we're trying to mitigate? Typically things like loitering, vandalism, theft, violent crimes. That part's pretty standard, pretty self-explanatory. So this is just a representation, a graphic kind of showing a typical campus environment. This could be a school or a warehouse or whatever. And you can see that we have a couple unique areas that we're trying to protect. Often when you think about a typical, store or restaurant, it's just the building. It's just the front of house, the back of house entrances. Whereas a larger facility that has larger perimeter areas, like I said, we have things like vehicular entrances where we want to watch, see the cars that are coming and going. We have entrances to buildings, main entrances, as well as auxiliary entrances and exits. We have a variety of roadways. We could have the exterior of buildings, parking lots that could be far off and remote. And then finally, things like perimeters and fence lines that could be large and relatively unmanned and unsecured. Here are a couple other examples. On the left showing kind of a small school in a wooded area. Again, just some 3D renderings and mock-ups, but where, again, just various challenges, right? We have all those same elements. Maybe it's only one roadway, a smaller parking lot, but we still have all those areas. We still have that perimeter that we want to keep safe. And on the top right, a larger campus that, lots and lots of areas and buildings, just multiplying what we're talking about. And at the bottom, you can see just some real-life examples, some aerial shots of a variety of campus air facilities, so we can kind of see what we're talking about here. Another important thing to keep in mind is, cameras and video surveillance is great, but we also want to think about the bigger picture, some environmental factors. There's a lot that we can do to help safeguard and secure a facility using best practices, things like crime prevention through environmental design. So things like lighting and security patrols. Like I mentioned, we'll talk about audio, fences, gates, security placards, anything to make your facility a more visible and a more hardened target, reducing shadows, reducing hiding spots, getting rid of shrubbery or trees that might be in the way or concealing areas or people. And we also have to think about any video surveillance you put up needs to be considered for changes in seasons, for growth of trees during the spring. If you put up a camera in the fall or winter and the trees are bare, and then in the spring the trees bloom, that could cover a camera. Or as trees and foliage grow, we want to make sure we keep things trimmed back so that way we can still continue to see what we need to see. Okay. So the first one, the first problem that we encounter in large facilities that we typically wouldn't have in an indoor application is having no light or little light. So typically a camera needs some amount of light to see. So the solution for many years has been using cameras with built-in or external IR illumination and matching that with cameras that are able to see that illumination. So one great thing that's come over the past 5-6 years now is cameras that have very long range IR. So if you're looking down a fence line, if you're at a perimeter, if you're on a corner of a building and you're trying to see very far out, choosing the right cameras, and I'm not going to talk about specific exact models here today. I want to talk more about the technology in general. But many cameras have long-range IR floodlights that can see very long distances and get rid of hot spots, specifically in the middle. And so this allows us to give us full coverage. In addition, if we are in a more built-up area, maybe we're not on a corporate campus that's by itself, maybe we have other neighbors nearby. Often using IR can help prevent light pollution, so that way we're not bothering our neighbors, as well as we're not giving away the camera's position with a white light, so it's non-visible lighting, so the camera can see it, can use it. And like I said, there are some cameras that can see hundreds or even thousands of feet away. So depending on your camera installation location, that can be very beneficial. And so some of the technology that's been enhanced the past couple of years for that, if you look at the picture on the top right, all the way on the right, you'll see what's a traditional IR LED or a traditional LED with the two leads coming off of it. And that's an older style IR. They didn't have a very long range. So the picture kind of on the left, that is a newer surface mount IR LED. And you'll see that the picture of the camera on the bottom left, you'll see that there's only a couple IRs. There's two of them on the right side and there's two hiding on the left. You can't really see it on that picture. But what we're able to do is we can do more with less. And the picture on the bottom right, you'll see there's a bullet camera, that there's two purple looking lights, versus the camera on the right, there's a whole ring of them. And so what we're able to do is these more intelligent active devices, they put off just a cleaner light source, so we need fewer of them, but they can travel further and they get rid of those hot spots like I was mentioning. So when you're looking at cameras, you can physically look at them. You can see what type of infrared IRs they have, what type of LEDs they have, and if they're the better type, that they will perform better. And specifically for perimeters, for larger campus facilities, when we're concerned about longer range and longer distances, choosing cameras that have that better type of IR will just function a lot better. In addition, they have better power management, so they will physically get less hot. So you're not wasting heat, you're not reducing the lifespan of the camera, and they will have better power management for using less power from your PoE switch typically as well. And here's just another picture that shows, hopefully you saw the little animation there. And this is talking about for when you have cases for really long distances, thousands of feet or hundreds of feet. There are cameras that have, in this case here, it's showing a PTZ camera, but it's also talking about that IR. And it's specifically mentioning that some cameras have infrared illuminators that can either have a lens on them or switch between a bank of high range, long distance versus a wide angle. So you can zoom in. So this is showing we can zoom in on this camera like 650 feet away and still get amazing IR performance. So when you have those long fence lines, you might have a PTZ that's going on a sequence, going from preset to preset, or doing a virtual guard tour, and this allows us to still have amazing IR coverage, regardless of zooming in or zooming out. And so that's a really big benefit of not needing to put external IR illuminators all over a facility in the, what if I need to zoom in here? So the camera can do that for you. And speaking of PTZs, so traditionally a lot of people have been using PTZs for many, many years, and then they kind of fell into some disuse because people would say the PTZ is always looking at, always looking at the wrong place. And so how do we mitigate that? What's the point of having a PTZ if it's not catching the action? And we'll talk about some AI stuff in a little bit, but a lot of PTZs, in addition to allowing an operator to manually, adjust where they're looking or go on a virtual guard tour, many PTZs now also have auto tracking. And that can be integrated with things like analytics and AI. So that way, when motion is detected or when a person is detected, maybe you have a back door, and typically at nighttime, no one's using that door. You could have it set up so that way, if a person is detected, if motion is detected, if the door contact is open, any of those could be an alarm input. The camera can swing over to a preset location, find a person, and start tracking them. And so that allows us to use the PTZ to zoom in to get better detail, as well as being able to follow a person as they make their way through the facility. So we have a record of where they're going. So that way they don't just go out of the field of view of the camera in a couple seconds. So PTZs are really an important piece in helping to in addition to typical fixed cameras. You'll often see PTZs in parking lots, on lighting poles. You'll see them on the side or corner of a building, as well as often sometimes at entrances or exits to facilities to be able to zoom in and see different things of what's who's coming and going. Okay. Another challenge that we'll have in large facilities with large perimeter protection is difficult lighting conditions, difficult weather conditions. And so this is an example of fog. And so here I'm in the East Coast of the U.S., and we have some wildfires going on coming out from Canada, causing foggy, smoky, hazy conditions. And so many cameras nowadays have some automatic technologies that can be enabled. It's called defog, that can help the camera to enhance the visualization, the image that you're seeing, to compensate for snow, fog, smog, dust, any of those types of things, to allow you to better see your facility. So that way, 24/7, 365, it can help with that. We also have cameras that can trigger detecting a foggy condition as an analytic to alert an operator that, hey, pay more attention. You might not be able to see as well. And then it can then turn on the defog feature. So that's another great piece there, especially when you have perimeters by water, bodies of water, where you might have more foggy conditions than other people. That could be an important piece. Next up is sometimes getting a data cable, running a network connection back to your home run to your network closet for a camera installation could be very difficult, especially when you have cameras on a fence line at a remote location. It could be at a pole in a parking lot. So two technologies. One is a PoE Extender Camera that we have. And what it does is you have an existing location, an existing data run that has your network cable run to it with power over Ethernet or PoE Plus, actually. And our PoE Extender allows us to add an additional camera or other device up to 260 feet away. So it allows me to add a second camera without having to add any additional infrastructure, without having to trench the parking lot, without having to make it difficult to do that home run. So if you later on realize, hey, we need another camera down that fence line or on the corner of the building, we don't have to, rework all that infrastructure. Now, there are cases, I don't have a slide on this, but there are some cases where you might have extreme long distances you need to go. And in cases like that, then typically people will use fiber. There are some cameras that have direct attached fiber in the camera, or some cameras that use high-powered PoE. Some cameras will have a media converter, an SFP, a fiber slot in the PoE injector that comes with the camera. So a neat way to do long cable runs there. Our PoE Extender Camera can also be used with other devices. So if you needed to, let's say, add an intercom down the road, or add a PoE light, or an infrared illuminator, or some other device in a location where you already have that data run for that camera, you're able to add a second device there. And so, yes, someone's asking a question, can we piggyback one on the other? So, yeah, so this PoE Extender Camera has two network ports. One is a network in and one is network out. So it's PoE plus in and then PoE out. And so it allows us, again, on that one cable run to have then two cameras on there. And I guess the slide's out of order. I already mentioned about the IRPTZ. So this is another picture kind of showing what it looks like. The camera on the left is actually kind of unique because it actually has a wiper. So in cases where you have cameras outdoors and you need that 24/7 consistent monitoring capabilities, if you're in rainy, foggy, snowy conditions, that wiper allows an operator to push a button to clear the camera's window to be able to help if anything's impairing the way of the camera. Both these cameras do have infrared. Like I said, being able to see hundreds and hundreds of feet away. So that's an important piece to consider. A lot of people are used to PTZs, but the IRPTZs are somewhat of a newer aspect there. The other piece that goes along with, I mentioned about PoE extenders and PTZs, and someone actually asked this question in the chat, so I'm glad that you're thinking along the right route, the right lines there, is multi-sensor and multi-directional. So multi-sensor cameras have become very popular the past 5 or 6 years. And the idea is being able to put one of these cameras, typically it's going to be hung on a corner of a building. It's going to have a cap. It's going to have a wall mount arm, so it comes off the side of the building a little bit. And this allows us to be able to see both sides of a building. So if it's on a corner, see to the right, see to the left, and then be able to have one lens typically looking straight down if I'm concerned about someone right at the building there. Or if it's a larger area, being able to cover the whole parking lot, being able to cover the whole 270 degrees field of view with those 3 or 4 lenses. So we have a variety of models. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we have some 2-headed cameras, 3-head, 4-headed, as well as on the bottom right, the 5-headed camera. So the 5-headed, again, that's often going to be on the corner of a building or on a pole in the parking lot. What it does is it has 4 multi-sensor, multi-directional cameras around, and you can adjust where they're aimed. You can choose, we have different resolution options, and we can manually adjust where the cameras are looking. And then we have a PTZ, and they're able to interact with each other. So that way an operator watching can easily click on the 4 heads going around, the quad heads, and be able to move the PTZ automatically. We can also do things like integrating analytics. So if an analytic happens on one of the quad heads going around, the PTZ can zoom in to that location and track a subject to get you that better detail. So that works really great. Things like nighttime unattended monitoring to track an unusual activity, something that shouldn't normally be occurring. And then on the bottom left, is what's known as a stitched panoramic camera. And we have a new version now that's AI. It's really amazing. We have a couple different versions. And it can show us actually more than 180 degrees. This model here shows 209 degrees. We have some that can do 220 degrees. But it gives me one image that goes out to my video management platform. But it's a stitched image. So imagine this is on the side of a building. Maybe it's on the entryway to a building. I can now see the entire wall of that building. So if it's looking at a parking area, I can see the whole parking area. And it's very easy for an operator to visually understand the data coming to them because it's a natural looking wide image. There's a lot of applications for these. We see these in indoor applications, outdoor applications. Think about at airports where you're looking at the tarmac. We have this huge areas to cover, not having to deal with multiple tiles, multiple camera feeds, but it's just one stitched image. Really great for, like I said, things like parking lots there. So that's that one there as well. Besides that, we have a whole variety of other multi-sensors. And the next slide, you'll see a couple of the other advantages. So this is showing an example of how I can adjust each of the four heads, choose where they're going to look. I can zoom in, I can zoom out. So if I need to target a specific area with more detail, we can zoom in there. Other parts can be zoomed out wide. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And the idea is we can replace one camera with multiple, or sorry, other way around, replace multiple cameras with one physical camera, one multi-directional camera. They use a single cable. They have different power requirements based on the camera, but they're all PoE of some standard, PoE, PoE Plus, or the high-powered HPoE. And the idea is that then there's no blind spots, complete coverage of an area of a facility. In addition, there's some great cost savings of using multi-sensors because I need one set of mounting accessories, one cable run, one port on my PoE switch. And in many VMSs, you often only need a single license. So when we bring a multi-sensor into the WiseNet Wave, our VMS, even if it has 2, 3, 4, 5 heads, it only needs a single recording license. And so you save on your VMS licensing there. Some of our models, and hopefully you're seeing the little animation on the bottom, some of our models have a feature called PTRZ, Pan, Tilt, Rotate, Zoom. People typically think about this for installation for saving costs, in that I physically install the camera, I put the cover on, and I'm done. Then from the inside, from your VMS, we can then adjust the pan, the tilt, the rotation, the zoom, including the cameras rotating around the track. When you think about a camera high up on the corner of a building, like a multi-sensor often is, the last thing I want to do is have to rent a bucket truck. If we're thinking about operational maintenance costs and ongoing issues, I don't want to have to go up on the side of a building with a bucket truck because I need to make a minor adjustment to where that camera is aimed or focused. So we can do all this remotely. When you think about long-term, that down the road, you might realize, well, I wish this camera was looking a little bit more to the left, or I wish it was zoomed in or out a little bit more. The fact that PTRZ allows me to individually choose each sensor and adjust where it's looking after the fact without needing to roll a truck, it can have huge cost savings for an end user, time savings for an integrator. It's just a really great feature that can be used all the time. It can, it's not just, that one day during installation, but down the road, as you are using the system in an operational environment, of fine-tuning, of tweaking really how you want to use the system to get the best field of view there. Whoops. And then the next topic I wanted to talk about, and again, feel free to keep typing in any of these questions. If we don't get to them, we'll get to them at the end. The next thing I want to talk about, specifically for a lot of perimeter protection, is often you're tasked with detecting people 24/7. And like I said, things like fog or snow, dark, no lighting, low lighting, or camouflage situations. There are some times where a typical traditional camera just can't see through that. So the solution that we have is a variety of thermal cameras. Typically, historically, thermal cameras were only used, airports, military, ports and dams, things like that. But pricing and the use of thermal cameras has really ramped up, and they've become more affordable and able to be used in a wide variety of applications. Now, thermal cameras are not sold everywhere, and they cannot be shipped to other countries. So you have to check, are they available wherever you are? I know there's some people on this call from all over the world. So just be aware of that. It might not be available everywhere. So what does a thermal camera do? Thermal cameras allow us, and there's different lensing. So you'll see we've got different models. So you have to kind of determine which model you need for your application. Some of our cameras you'll see here, they're showing an example of a 13 millimeter, 19 or 35 millimeter lens with different field of view. What they do is it allows me to detect vehicles or people at ultra long ranges, up to 3,000 meters away. So the idea is, instead of having to put dozens of cameras along a fence line monitoring, and it's hard for a guard to monitor huge amounts of cameras, the idea is I can put fewer thermal cameras covering a wide area, and if there's a hot object against the background, such as a person, such as a vehicle, the thermal camera will be able to detect that, and an operator can easily visually distinguish that object from the background. So you don't have to worry about snow and nighttime or camouflage situations. We also have some bispectrum cameras, which gives you the benefits of thermal, in addition with coupled with a visual camera. So that way, during daytime normal operations, or you want to just verify what you're seeing, you have both images available. So again, if you're doing thermal, I would always suggest talk to a sales manager to make sure you're choosing the right model for your application based on what your needs are. In our industry, we talk about being able to detect, observe, or identify a person or a vehicle based on how many pixels we have. So you have to really design your solution properly. But thermal can be a great application of, is there a person coming over that fence line? Is there a person hiding in the trees? Is there someone going to a building, an outbuilding that normally no one goes to? So thermal is a great application. And coupled with that, we have a whole suite of intelligent video analytics in most of our cameras. In addition, when we have thermal cameras, we can do things like having a thermal camera set off an analytic that says, if something is hotter than this, if we detect a vehicle, vehicles have a certain temperature, trigger that event. Other types of analytics that we can do, things like virtual line crossing or entering into an area. So we can have a virtual line if someone crosses over that line. We also have shock detection on many of our cameras. Shock detection can detect an impact on the camera. So if I have a remote area that normally I'm not monitoring, if someone is attacking that camera, if someone's throwing something at the camera, trying to disable the camera, that could be a trigger to notify an operator, hey, take a look, try to see what's going on. Because often a large facility might have large areas that are not being, again, regularly manned or guarded or people going there. So having these analytics in the cameras to detect something happening. Going along with shock detection, we also have a tamper detection that can detect if the scene, if the image coming from the camera changes rapidly, again, meaning someone might be trying to vandalize that camera. And on the bottom, we have some sound detection and sound classification, and that can be used to help identify a dangerous situation that might not be in the field of view of the camera, but the camera might be able to hear it. So using a microphone, the camera can detect certain types of sounds, and that can be a trigger into a video management platform. I mentioned this briefly earlier, and this would be true for a standard camera or a thermal camera, or any of those would work. But being able to do what we call a PTZ handover, being able to have an event on a standard camera, could be any of those analytics I just mentioned previously. If there's motion in a certain area, if someone crosses that virtual line, the thermal analytics, whatever it might be, we can then have it trigger a PTZ to zoom in on that area, and then we could do auto tracking. So we're able to combine many of these technologies together to have a system that works for you that's a lot more active than just a passive system that an operator now has to do everything. So the system can take actions on its own. And then the final one that I hinted at earlier is talking about audio again. Having a microphone, typically it's going to be an external microphone, but being able to provide another sense into our video management platform, being able to listen to an area that either with an operator or with those audio detection or sound classification analytic, and then being able to then talk back. So being able to de-escalate a situation, or talk to someone that's calling out for help, or hey, someone's lost, or they're trying to enter a building and they clearly don't belong. Being able to use a microphone at the operator station and be able to talk out of a speaker at the camera that tells someone, hey, the building's monitored, please leave, or this, you're at the wrong building, or go around to the front, or whatever. There's also ways of being able to do a audio talk down using an automated notification message. So if you think about a car dealership, this is a very common, it's been happening for many, many years. Car dealers want to be notified if someone crosses their into their property, or jumps the fence, or is too close to their vehicles. Being able to play a sound file that says, hey, we see you, we're calling the police, please leave. So we can do that with an automated pre-recorded message, or you can have a operator talking live out through the camera. So there's a lot of applications for audio that can work very well when you have large facilities. Just keep that in mind. A lot of people don't think about it, or it's later on, or it's we have that in one place. Audio can be used in a lot of locations. Most of our cameras do have the two-way audio capability. So you're only running that single network connection to the camera, and then you're connecting speakers and microphones to that camera from there. Moving on is about AI. So I mentioned about analytics briefly. So AI is the new hot topic. And what that does is, or the way that the Hanwha does it, is we have all of the analytics on the edge, meaning on the camera, and it's all license-free, built into the camera. So the cameras have been programmed to detect specific types of objects. You can see here, we can detect people and vehicles. We can classify vehicles into bicycle, car, bus, truck, or motorcycle. And then people also have a face, and vehicles have license plates. And what this lets us do is it allows us to trigger any of those analytics I mentioned before. So it could be loitering, if we want to detect if a person is loitering in front of a building. If we want to detect if a person crossed a virtual fence line or a physical fence line, we can create analytics and use the analytics to reduce the false alarms of when you think about a fence line, if you think about a perimeter, you've got trees. You've got foliage blowing in the wind. You've got sunlight and shadows changing all the time. You have weather conditions, rain, snow, things like that, that will get a traditional analytic confused. And so AI is very robust and accurate and allows me to use those analytics 24/7 in all different situations there. And so it allows me to get rid of false alarms. So an operator watching can just see, hey, here's where that person crossed that line, or here's when a person was loitering for too long, or a car was standing in a no stopping zone. So that can all be triggered there. Or maybe there's a roadway there shouldn't be any trucks or buses or whatever. We can trigger that as an event. In addition to using AI for analytics, we can also just do pure object detection. We can go into a VMS and say, when was there a person here between 9 and 10 a.m. or whatever it might be? And that is typically what we call a forensic search. And so the way we do this is our cameras are, in addition to streaming the video and the audio, we are also sending in a snapshot. We call it either a best shot or a detection shot, but we're sending a snapshot of that object, that person, the vehicle, to the VMS. And then the compatible VMSs can then do a advanced search after the fact. And so I could go in and say camera number 12 in the main roadway to the facility, or maybe the camera on the a certain building looking out into the corner, into the perimeter of the fence line. I want to see when there are people, and it's going to show me that cropped snapshot. So I don't have to squint. I don't have to zoom into the whole image. I can very quickly see those people, those vehicles. In addition, we have the ability to do an advanced search and say, show me someone who's wearing a blue shirt or black pants or a red car. And so we can do these complex searches with multiple criteria, allowing me to search through days or hours of video in seconds. And so that's really exciting, being able to speed up your searching through hours of video. We also have some cameras, if you're specifically talking about vehicles and roadways, we have some cameras with a feature called MMCR, which stands for Make, Model, and Color Recognition. So if you have a need to, in addition to the video surveillance on your facility, sometimes you need to get license plate capture to be able to have the plate data available. So we have cameras that can do that using AI. But it also adds in things like being able to search by vehicle type or model or color or a plate number. So if you're looking for a blue RAV4, you could type that in, or a blue truck or a blue sedan, you could type that in. You could type in a partial plate number to be able to see when something was detected. So we have a lot of great solutions using AI. And then the final slide I will show before we get to any questions is wrapping up again about AI to kind of show a visual of what the difference is. On the left, traditional analytics, traditional motion detection would use, like I said, pixel-based detection. So anytime you had changes in sunlight, shadows, if you had a cat or a dog walking by, if you had the clouds floating by, if you had maybe there's a fountain in a outside of a building, the rippling water, all of that, a bag blowing in the wind, all of that will trigger a traditional analytics and traditional motion detection. So AI that you see on the right is detecting that is what a person looks like or a vehicle, and you'll see it's ignoring the shadows, it's ignoring anything else there. So it improves your operator efficiency. It makes it that you can, large facilities, as your camera counts increase, it's very difficult to search through lots of amounts of video. So AI allows me to, like I said, reduce false alarms. It allows me to use forensic search and be much more efficient in what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and being able to create those custom rules of saying this camera should be looking for this unusual situation, right? Loitering of a person in a certain area, or a vehicle staying in this area too long, or cars shouldn't be in the loading dock. It should only be, trucks. So if a car is detected here, so we can create those rules as needed, and it's very, very powerful. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ralph. I thank you for your time, and then we'll take a look at your questions here in a moment.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you taking the time to give this presentation. To our listeners, if you have a question, please click on the Ask a Question button and go ahead and ask your question. Here's a great question. I'd like to know, and so would our listener, what's your average shipping time to Hawaii?
Yes. So, the past 2 years with the COVID pandemic, there's been a lot of logistics and supply chain issues. We, Hanwha, work with a variety of strategic distributors throughout the U.S., throughout the world. Their job is to stock product, so shipping times would be based on what the distributor says. But we do have our own inventory here in the U.S., so we do have a lot of products stateside. And then we don't sell direct. We sell through distributors, through an authorized dealer. But anything to Hawaii, that might add a couple days because obviously it's a further distance and going by air. So I don't have an exact number there, but that would be a question for a distributor. We have a page on our website, hanwhavisionamerica.com, that lists who our strategic distributors are.
And the next question, Aaron, can this security solution detect guns?
So my question, so I'm trying to look through. My guess is, depending on when you ask that question, when we're talking about some of the audio parts, we do have our audio detection that can detect a gunshot. It's a little bit different than some of the other gunshot detection systems out there. Some systems are very advanced and use a whole array of microphones and processors. Ours is a very simple algorithm, listening for very specific sounds. If you're talking about specifically using the camera's video to detect guns, we are not doing that today as an analytic. We do have some analytics partners, third-party partners, who process the video looking for a variety of things like guns or aggression or fights or things like that. So there are solutions with that, especially when you combine it with our Edge AI. That's a person. So there are ways to use Edge AI and integrate with something else to do the gun detection there.
And Aaron, do you have wireless camera options as well?
Yeah, so we don't have cameras with built-in wireless per se. Typically, a lot of the off-the-shelf wireless cameras have very low range, don't have high power wireless. So typically what we do is we work with our integrator partners, and they often will develop a custom wireless solution using a reliable professional wireless link that is tuned for that application. So there are a lot of times where people, whether they have line of sight or don't have line of sight, where they will implement something. But typically on our camera side, everything we do is hardwired for professional applications.
Going to a question from one of our listeners, and you probably already answered this, but he's asking, does this AI tech detect weapons? It may be a redundant question, but I wanted to let the listener know that. Okay, the next question, is there a plugin or license needed for the AI search feature to work with Milestone?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that one. I'm going to go back 2 slides. So you'll see specifically when we talked about the forensic review here, it shows compatible with Genetec and Milestone and the WiseNet Wave VMS. Both of those, Genetec and Milestone, do use a plugin. One of those VMSs, the plugin is on our website for download or in their app store. The other one, I think you have to get it from the VMS themselves. So there is a plugin. The plugin gets installed on your server, on your archiver, as well as on the client to get that forensic search dashboard. But I believe Milestone and Genetec, they are both license free. I believe Genetec used to charge a one-time license, and that has gone away. So it's a very easy to install. We have a document on our website that shows the process of installing the plugin and doing some basic configuration. But it's quick, it's easy, and the plugin for both of those VMS was written by Hanwha. So we have a direct integration done really, really great.
All right. What's the notification time to receive an alert?
Yes. So, typically alerting would be done at your VMS. Typically, the camera is detecting whatever it's detecting, whether it's any of these AI analytics, that gets sent to your video management platform. And, that's typically going to be within, milliseconds. Again, because the processing is done on the camera side, so the VMS doesn't really have to do much with it. It doesn't have to do any additional processing. And then the VMS then sends out its alert from there, whether that's a mobile push or a desktop notification or whatever it might be. So that really depends on your network and how you're transmitting. Are you sending it out to a mobile app on Wi-Fi or 3G, or not 3G, but 5G or whatever? But the camera's going to send it out right away to the VMS, and it really just depends on your network and the network topology from there.
Aaron, do you feel that using a multi-head would be better than using a PTZ these days?
Yeah. So in many cases, people have opted now to go with multi-sensor or multi-directional cameras. When you think about, like I said, on the corner of a building, the side of a building, absolutely. That's what people are really using to reduce their camera count. So they don't need 2, 3, 4 cameras in the same area. However, if you need a camera for that high resolution, that zoom, there still are applications for PTZ, long range zoom, auto tracking, long range IR. There are PTZs that can get you better quality zoom with better IR long distance performance, like I was showing, like 600 some feet away, that a multi-sensor just typically cannot do. So typically the multi-sensor is giving you that broad overview, and the PTZ can then complement it for that enhanced detail, for that zoom view. And when you have large perimeter, large facility, multiple buildings, parking lots, PTZs should not be overlooked. They absolutely do have a place for them.
And our next question, do these cameras work on HVRs and NVRs or just on a VMS?
Yeah, so, I was trying to stay pretty broad, not going to specific models, whatever, but so that's a good point. So all of our cameras that I'm talking about today, I'm talking specifically on our line of IP network-based cameras. We follow standards, so all of our cameras are ONVIF compliant, meaning you can use our own VMS WiseNet Wave. You can use some of our good partners like Milestone, Genetec, Salient, and tons of others. If you want to use an NVR, absolutely. The challenge is making sure is that NVR compatible with things like the analytics events or the AI or the forensic search. And that's where it's important to look at the full end-to-end. But absolutely, for basic recording, absolutely, you can use an NVR, whether it's an existing one or a new one from someone else, absolutely.
And take just a minute, Aaron, to talk about 8K cameras.
So good point. Yeah, I didn't mention that here, but yeah. So we have one of the industry's only 8K surveillance camera, and so that could be used where you might have a limited installation viewpoint of where you can put that camera, but I might need to cover a large area. So like I worked with a lumber yard or a train, a rail depot. I've seen mining operations where they need to cover a humongous area. They often want good detail, so that train yard wanted to be able to zoom in and see the numbers on some of the trains. So they were able to put an 8K camera, mount that with the right lens, and get 8K detail, so way beyond 4K resolution, which is fairly standard now, taking it to the next step, and being able to get that immense detail and quality from a single camera, from a single sensor. Things like airports are using that, where they might have an 8K camera looking at the runway, but they can also see much of their perimeter and fence line to keep it safe and secure.
Aaron, we've pretty much run out of time, but I want to go to this one last question. What other object types or attributes does your AI support besides clothing and color, which you already mentioned?
So we have a full API available for people who want to do integration. If you're using, again, some of our partner VMSs, Milestone, Genetech, we do have a document on our website on the AI cameras, on the plugin, that talks about that. And so if I can back up, hopefully this shows, there we go. This shows some of it. It actually doesn't show all of it, but we can do vehicle classification. We can also do, I believe, if I recall correctly, age, gender, if they have a bag. If I remember correctly, I think it can do, I think it was glasses. And also face mask. So during COVID, that was an important one. Now you could have a bank and say if someone enters with a mask, that's an alarm. But yeah, so we have that. We have top clothing color, bottom clothing color, vehicle color, the presence of a license plate, and then specifically on the license plate cameras, we have the make, the model, and the color of the vehicle. So there's a lot of great options there. Again, our plugin and API documents really list all the details of that there. Yep.
I know we have a few more questions. I'm sorry, folks, we're out of time. Aaron, thank you for your expertise and for this presentation. I would also like to thank Hanwha Vision America for sponsoring this event today. And a thanks to each of you for spending the last hour with us. Remember, this webinar recording will be placed on our website, www.securitytoday.com, so that you can listen again and share with a colleague. This ends today's information session. Thank you.